Hello and welcome to the Just Interesting podcast, Season 2. We have decided, we have read your comments, and Season almost universally won. There are a few dissenting comments about series that, tugged on our heartstrings, but ultimately it seems like Season was the real choice. Yeah. Well, I've spoken about that a lot now.
No, Alex, just to add to that point, despite being British, we use series and season interchangeably, I think, here in the UK. Maybe that's an Americanization. So we're very much happy with season.
Yeah.
And thank you for your input.
Yes, and those lovely words there obviously came from Martin. How have you been, Martin?
I've been all right, thanks. Actually, to be honest, it hasn't been the best week and a half, really. A few things have gone wrong. But I'm okay now. It's always good to be speaking to you guys, and that's what matters, right? No, there's no point saying, I always say I'm good. If I'm not good, why not say I'm not that good? So, haven't been the best this week, but I'm happy to be speaking to you lads.
Oh, well, I'm I hope you feel better, and there is something like,
thanks, guys.
There is something annoying about that, isn't it? When it's like, you just kind of feel obliged to be like, yeah, I'm good, even if you're not good. So yeah.
Yeah, I when I was a lot younger, I used to go to a church, and that was one of my main criticisms. When everyone sees each other in a church, it's always, how are you? And everyone says, yeah, great. But if people aren't great, say you're not great.
Yeah.
Right? Because surely that's a place to be honest. Anyway.
Such a British thing to do, yeah.
Just to say you're fine all the time.
Yeah. I think
anyway.
I'm glad you played that, Martin.
Sorry, Robin. You had another point there.
I feel like that's like the biggest sin in modern society, isn't it? At least in British society, is people always, at the very least, they'll compare themselves and say, "Oh, well, at least I'm not a starving child in Africa." I'm just like, people are allowed to have problems. You're allowed to struggle, even if you know your life is better than other people. If you've got problems, feel free, talk about it. Confess it to other people.
That was one of the things that went round. I remember there was the thing with Sam Smith, wasn't there? What actually happened there? He was like complaining about having some mental health issues during lockdown, and people were like, celebrities complaining about this when they're sitting in their mansions. It's like, no, he's still allowed to have issues, despite him having lots of wealth and living in a nice house. Yes, it's not as bad as some other people, but it doesn't make it irrelevant, does it?
Yeah. That's very true. Very true.
Anyway, that
so
got
here
really
we are
deep.
That did, right at the start as well.
Everybody always comes to us for a bit of light entertainment, a little bit of escapist fun. That's what they're here for.
I think when the end of COVID happens, we've got to do a supercut of all these podcasts, like over the course of the lockdown, and we'll see over time they just got more and more darker and darker as the lockdown progressed. We're in kind of the heart of summer at the moment, aren't we? And it definitely doesn't feel like it. I don't know about you guys. The weather hasn't really reflected. There we go. I've segued, and we're back to talking about the weather.
This
back
has
to
been
the
a constant
safety of
theme,
weather.
Alex. The last few weeks, just always the weather with you.
Yeah.
I'm angry, Alex.
What?
I'm not really. I'm not at all angry. The weather is a big deal.
But yeah, no, I mean, like I think mood is down across the board, not just with us, but with everyone. Surely, how are you guys feeling in the comments? Are you feeling the lockdown? Are you happy? Are you going out with your £10 voucher off Pizza Express?
I'm going to go to Woking. As soon as lockdown is sufficiently eased, I'm going to Pizza Express in Woking.
And making sure you're not sweating all over the pizzas.
No, too late.
If anyone doesn't know, this is all in reference to Prince Andrew.
Yeah. Anyway, from Pizza Express to what we're talking about today. No, that's not a segue. We can cut that out.
To Interesting Express.
Interesting Express, yeah. Today, we've got an interesting topic. This one comes to us from one of our Patreon
Just today.
supporters.
This is the first interesting topic we've ever had. But today, it's interesting.
Yeah, this one actually really was interesting. We all kind of... I don't know about you, but I'd never heard of this theory before. But it involves sun cycles. And this one came to us from one of our Patreon supporters, Joseph Donahue, on Patreon, who asked us to discuss an article about solar cycles. And basically, we'll get into it later, but it's basically these cycles that the sun goes through, and they could influence human behaviors. And it was really interesting, actually.
Yeah, fascinating theory.
But before we jump into anything, just want to say a huge thanks to our Patreon supporters. You guys make this podcast possible. And if you did want to sign up to our Patreon, we've just recorded an episode where we discussed, oh my God, what did we discuss? Roger Stone. That was it. And President Trump commuting Roger Stone's sentence and what that could mean and whether he's justified in doing that. So if you're interested in that, head over there and give it a listen.
But before we get into that, we actually had a lovely Apple Podcast review from Harry Anthony Potter, which I'd like to share with you guys, if that's all right.
Yeah. Harry Potter gave us a review. That's amazing.
Yeah, a 5-star review, and the title is absolutely fantastic, which, that is absolutely fantastic. So Harry says, I have been watching and listening to these guys for 5 years and must say their content never missed a beat. Their old podcast was a great podcast and fantastic addition to anyone's library. So what can you say about this one? Well, for a start, it's not just interesting, it's bloody marvellous. The 3 great hosts, thank you, Harry, always present a sharp cut and enjoyable listen every time. It's not true, but thank you. There is always something to learn and just something fascinating or interesting that they present. And of course, inject it with great banter that keeps it fresh, exciting, and always makes me giggle when I'm listening at work. Naughty, naughty. Apple, Spotify, someone get these boys a bloody sponsorship because this is by far the best podcast on any platform. Thank you.
That
was
so
really nice.
Wow.
That's made my day.
Thank you, Harry.
Oh.
That's incredible.
Harry,
do you write for a living? Because that was genuinely a great bit of prose. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And if anyone else wants to write a good bit of prose or a terrible bit of prose, but with a 5-star or at least a reasonable starred review, then please head on over and do so. It helps us out.
Oh, yeah.
But also, honest
amazing.
opinions are valued. So 1-star reviews, dissent is allowed. Don't worry.
No.
It is allowed, but we will find where you live.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that, Harry. Okay, guys, what have you learned this week?
Shall I go first?
Do it.
No, I want Robin to go first. No, go ahead, Martin.
So mine's a little bit UK centric, but it's cool anyway, and that is that wild bison are to return to the UK for the first time in 6,000 years.
I saw this.
Yes.
In Kent.
Wow.
What's that?
In Kent, I could be amongst the bison within 2022 springtime, but within 2 years I could be, I don't know, gallivanting amongst the bison. I mean, bison apparently. So that's an image, isn't it? Apparently, bison aren't actually that dangerous. They're quite docile. I imagine if you piss one off, it will be after you.
If they stampede, then they'll kill you. Yeah.
Then you're in a bit of a tough time. But anyway, so there's this project that they're going to reintroduce bison to help secure the future of this endangered species. So they're taking these bison from the Netherlands and Poland, which have actually released bison into their natural habitats over the last few years, and bringing them to the UK to kind of, not only improve the species and stop it from going extinct, but also to help the biodiversity in the UK itself and to naturally regenerate our pine woods. So what they do is they kill off a lot of trees, and they I don't know exactly how bison work, but they like kind of damage trees in woods and kind of clear space. So it's like a natural deforestation process, which actually helps the biodiversity in the area. So apparently it's a good thing for our wildlife. And the UK has been struggling with the natural world and wildlife. There's a stat that the Guardian article brought out that's an average of 60% of our important wildlife has been lost since 1970.
That's so sad,
That's
isn't it?
pretty bad.
Which is startling. And apparently this includes things like hedgehogs and like hares and stuff like that. Like traditionally quite British animals that you'd find in the countryside. And so this is like a conservation effort to help some of those species out and to kind of improve the biodiversity in the area. So I just thought this is mad that they're doing this now, like 6,000 years since we had bison.
Sorry, Martin. Are you saying that introducing bison to Kent are going to help hedgehogs?
Well, apparently it's them destroying this forest. I say destroying. I mean that's probably the wrong word, isn't it? What they do is
Trample.
they trample. Yeah, they brush up against trees and this like basically creates some scrublands and stuff like that, which are really useful for having like a more diverse wildlife than we currently have.
Oh, nice.
So apparently it's called ecosystem engineering.
Nice.
That's what they're planning on doing, creating clearings where these trees are, which allows birds like nightingales and turtle doves to thrive in these areas. So yeah, I'm well excited about potentially seeing bison where I live.
Yeah,
it's just mad.
I mean,
It's mad.
I know. I'm sure they've worked out that it's a good thing to do, but I know with this kind of thing, you've got to be very careful with like altering, the ecosystems. Because you change one thing and then it like affects the whole ecosystem. So I'm sure they worked
rabbits in
out.
Australia. Something bad could happen. I feel like
Yeah,
this is great. This is exciting. I didn't realize bison were in Poland and the Netherlands. That's amazing.
apparently, the Netherlands was like the last 15 years they've had a similar project and it's been really successful.
Okay.
So they're kind of taking that blueprint and introducing it into the south of England.
Well, if it works over here, that would be great. The way you're describing it, I just can't. Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive. I guess I can't help but have reservations about this preservation project. But
Nice wordplay,
sounds.
there, Robin.
Thank you. Yeah,
Nice.
But otherwise, yeah, awesome. Bring back the bison, but with moderation.
Yes.
That's 2020 Robin's political campaign.
That is
slogan.
Bring
back
my
the
key issue.
bison in moderation.
I mean, it does seem a little bit like a last hurrah, doesn't it? Of like, nothing else has worked.
Yeah.
Let's just bring back the bison and see what happens.
The bison's entire survival of their species is now reliant on Kent.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that. That was just a weird, unprovoked dig at Kent. That's,
There's nothing wrong with Kent, mate. Garden of England.
Yeah, nothing. There's nothing wrong with Kent.
You live in Essex.
I feel like that's it. It was just it was like a reflex because I'm from Essex. I don't know. It was unprovoked and it was unnecessary. So apologies.
It's okay. The apology is accepted.
Wow, I didn't realise the county versus county feeling was so strong in
there isn't really.
Essex and Kent. I mean, I don't think so.
Not especially. And I'm not particularly, hugely attached to Essex either. So I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it came from.
Wow, this podcast is a weird one. This is turning into some kind of, I know, psychotherapy thing. Whatever's going on. Anyway, I learned this week a story. It's also UK centric, sadly, and it's a historical one actually. I learned this week that during the Second World War, the government changed the law so that a jury only had to have 7 people on it instead of 12 men, good and true.
So they run out.
I see.
They run out of people. Was that?
I think basically, yeah, they were sending so many people to the war that they thought they'd reduce it to 7. But I thought that was an interesting choice to pick 7 people because you're removing 5 from your standard jury, but 12 is an even number.
Yeah,
and
that's my first thought.
Yeah, but you're changing it to an odd number, which means you can never have a split jury, right? So that kind of surely that has an actual effect on the sentencing system. Sorry, the decision-making process.
Yeah.
Maybe that was part of it as well. Like they wanted to speed up trials by having an odd-numbered jury so that there'd always be a decision reached regardless.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know in terms of looking back and looking at the legitimacy of some of the decisions made. Like when sometimes years later they find out that actually new evidence has come to light. It'd be interesting to know the success of that time period in terms of making supposedly the right decision, if that's the right way to say it. Did it cause serious issues in terms of the legal and justice system?
With the context of everything going on with the war and
but just like with 7, there's just not as much security that you're making the right decision, right? Those people are more likely to be maybe more likely to be persuaded to decide in favour or against a particular.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just I'm interested to know how the change in number, if it did in fact change some of those outcomes.
Yeah. Anybody listening who happens to know this or happens to be
That's so niche.
very niche, or even if you just know something about statistics, like is there a significant difference between 7 people versus 12? Like in my head, it's like 12 people is harder to convince, like Martin said, than 7 people. But I don't know, maybe it isn't. You know, there's that whole thing about a secret can be kept between 2 people, but once you've got a third person involved, it'll never be kept. Or that story, I don't know if that's apocryphal or anecdotal or what.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also the whole thing about, I mean, this is slightly different, but if you come across someone in trouble, you're more likely to help them if you're alone than if you're in a massive group, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if there's the bystander effect, I think it's called.
Diffusion of responsibility.
Yes, and so maybe people are more easily convinced if there's more numbers in the jury, because they think, oh well, 10 or 11 other people are convinced that this is going to be the case, that this outcome is the correct one. They must be right.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's 7, you know, if you have 1 or 2 people that aren't convinced, you know, you're getting onto half the jury thinking one way and half not. So, yeah.
And also if there's less people, maybe someone might be more willing to speak up and give their opinion. Whereas with like 10 to 12 people, they'd
that's true.
be more inclined just to go with whatever the majority was thinking.
That's a good point. Yeah, if 11 people think one thing and you're that one person who thinks differently, would you argue that hard against the other 11 people?
Yeah,
we can't all be Henry Fonda in 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
I mean, is there always 12 people in a jury in every country?
Good question.
I imagine that.
Good question.
I imagine there are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know that the reason we have 12 people on a jury is because of the Bible, isn't it? The 12 disciples, which the 12 disciples comes from the 12 tribes of Israel. So any Judeo-Christian legal system, presumably, has 12 people. But I don't know about countries that
is that the reason
never
why?
had that influence. I believe so, yeah.
I never knew that, Robin.
That's a good fact.
You should have led with that.
Oh.
No, I genuinely never knew that. Wow.
Next week's podcast, I need to find a different fact.
Oh, apparently it was, just in a quick Google, apparently it was Henry II who instituted the jury system of 12 based on that.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm
12th
sure.
century. Lots of 12s.
All the 12s.
I assume there was some kind of psychology behind it and some rationale for 12 people. But actually, yeah, it sounds like maybe that's definitely that could be looked into and explored further then, in that case. If it's just made by someone based on the Bible.
What's the real rationale behind it? It's a significant number in Jewish culture, but does that in itself have significance, or is it just a random number that they decided was significant?
Yeah.
It's like the power of 3, that there's psychologists suggest that one of the reasons 3 is a magic number is because it's easier to remember things in 3s, because you can remember the central thing and the 2 things either side of it. Your brain can do that, but when you have 4 things, then it's harder to kind of fix a focal point around which to remember the facts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like a sandwich, it's easy to remember what's in a sandwich because you've got 2 slices of bread and the thing in the middle. But if you've got a double-decker sandwich, then mind
it
blown.
all gets confusing. Have you worked in a cafe?
Before this podcast started, before we went live, we were talking about it, and Robin expressed his disgust. Or no, not disgust. That's too harsh. But you just don't like sandwiches. And now I'm understanding why.
Yes.
You just can't remember what's in them.
I mean, I did think it was right. I didn't question it at the time because you then mentioned things like egg mayonnaise that this place you went to, and tuna mayo, which of course they're not for everyone, are they?
No.
But there's so many different types of sandwich. You can't hate them all. That's madness.
I love burgers. Burgers are great.
That's not a sandwich.
I was saying it's fundamentally the same thing.
It is. Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Is a burger a sandwich? Let us know.
Asking the key questions this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So Alex, what did you learn this week?
Well, I learned about the history of firefighting. The entire history. No, not the entire history.
Really?
But I didn't. For me, for some reason, firefighting seemed like a relatively modern invention. I don't know why, but when do you think that the first firefighting service came into effect?
Service?
Well, okay, just like the firefighters as a group. in some kind of society? When do you think that was first established, or the first known as? Yeah. I'm saying too much.
As I remember from school, in medieval times they had the hue and cry, which was a way of getting people to chase after a criminal, wasn't it? So would they have something similar? Just like you get the local villagers involved, fire, and then everyone rushes out and starts putting out a fire. But in terms of an actual organised, fire service, I would have thought it was like Victorian times or something.
Well, because the way you frame this, Alex, is going to be incredibly early. So I'm going to go for the 4th century BCE, 400 BCE.
You are actually pretty spot on, Martin.
No.
Well, close. I think you're 100 years off. But there is evidence of firefighting machinery being used in ancient Egypt, including a water pump invented by Ctesibius of Alexandria in the 3rd century BC. But what I was actually really interested in is the fire service that they had in Rome, which was created by Marcus Licinius Crassus. And basically, he had 500 men who would rush to burning buildings and sound the alarm. And
do you need that many men to sound an alarm? That seems like a misapplication of resources.
Everyone, run to the alarm!
Sorry, they would sound the alarm. These 500 men would come running to the burning building. But here's the crucial thing. Instead of putting out the fire straight away, they would stand by the burning building and wait for Crassus, this man, and he would then come up to the owner, who is usually distraught, and offer him a terrible price for the building, like a really low reduced price to purchase the building. And if the owner agreed to it, then the 500 men would put out the fire. And if they disagreed with it, then they just stand there and watch the building burn down.
That's madness.
My God.
How mental is that?
That's not a service.
That is disgusting.
It's more of a, the first ever privatized firefighting service. That's what you can look for in your capitalist future. Yeah. And then from there, Roman Emperor Nero took the basic idea from Crassus and built it into the Vigilers in AD 60.
But didn't he fiddle when Rome burned?
Well, there's some degree of irony there, isn't there?
Yeah.
That he fiddled while Rome burned, and also created the Rome fire service, the actual fire service that were Roman people that would go around with bucket brigades and pumps, as well as poles, hooks to tear down buildings in advance of the flames. So
that's clever. That's really clever.
Yeah.
What are the hooks for?
I don't know.
Climbing. I don't know.
Yeah,
is that why he was fiddling? Actually, that puts a whole new spin on it. He's fiddling because he's like, "Oh, the fire service will take care of it."
It's like everything's under control.
I mean, I'd be interested to know if he made the fire service before or after.
No, it was before. He formed them.
It was before.
He formed this group in AD 60, and then notably the fire that burned down 2/3 of Rome happened in July AD 64. So, yeah.
That is unfortunate, isn't it? You found a fire service, and then the city burns down, despite the fact you've got a fire service.
People just felt comfortable, didn't they? They were like, less careful.
Or maybe that's the hidden bit of history. Got Nero the day after saying, "Well, it would have been the entirety of Rome if I hadn't got this fire service." And everyone's like, "We're still ungrateful."
Yeah. But yeah, I thought
that's
that was
fascinating. That's
an interesting thing I learned this week.
It's kind of like Crassus's thing. It's kind of like insurance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the
really
mob,
bad
isn't
insurance. It? Yeah, it's more like the mob. Yeah,
we're paying for protection.
Yeah.
In my mind, he's almost got a deal or no deal kind of situation going on, where as it continues to burn, he's just lowering the price every minute it burns.
Yeah.
I'm ready for the question, Noel.
Ready for the question, yeah.
In the meantime, he's got 500 men surrounding your building. Are you really going to say no? Either your building burns down, or these 500 men standing there will beat you up. Not that I'm saying you threatened that, but that's what your mind would be thinking, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Imagine that, though. Imagine if your house was burning down and someone was like, give you 20 grand for it. And you're like, what?
What?
Yeah, otherwise, it's 20 grand or nothing. My kids are inside. Well, okay, 25.
Oh, yeah. Well, and actually no, because then he'd have more leverage, wouldn't he?
Actually,
he'd
true,
want
yeah,
the fight
15.
to that.
Point,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, 15 then. Yeah. Anyway, moving on from firefighting, shall we have a look at some of the comments that were left in last week's video,
Yeah.
or any video, whichever one you've got?
Yeah, so a comment that caught my eye was from Jay Bradley, UK, who commented on our previous podcast, which was about where is the Ark of the Covenant? And this just amused me a lot. He said, Robin's silhouette looks like Leia, as in Princess Leia. Which
I've looked back and I can see a resemblance. The headphones on.
Well, exactly, like headphones, but I'm amused that this particular podcast made me look like Leia, rather than any previous podcast where I'm wearing headphones. But thank you, Jay Bradley. And, if I can look like Carrie Fisher, then I'm halfway there.
Halfway to,
I'm sure you'll be
halfway to what?
I don't know, but I'm halfway there. That's the
starring in
important thing.
a Princess Leia spin-off.
Yeah, come on, Disney, hire me for the next Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Do we know what the next one's going to be? Is there any rumblings?
They're going to make more TV series, aren't they? But apart from that, I don't think they've announced anything.
Yeah, there was what's it called, The Mandalorian, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was quite good.
Yeah, season 2 of that is coming out, and then they're making. I think they're making a Cassian Andor series. About the guy from Rogue One, the spy.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I don't think they've announced any movies because there were rumors of a trilogy by the Game of Thrones people, but that seems to have not gone anywhere.
Oh, I thought that got cancelled. The D&D
officially
trilogy,
cancelled.
because of the absolutely clusterfuck of season 7
of Game of Thrones. Yeah,
You're still incredibly angry.
Season 8. Sorry,
Behind you, Alex.
I'm actually fuming. Yeah, it's still. Sometimes I'll just catch myself thinking of it, and I'm like, oh, that was so bad. Yeah,
such a letdown. Such an unnecessary letdown as well.
It really was. Yeah.
I've never seen any of it, so I can't judge.
Don't watch it. It's not worth.
Don't watch any of it because of the ending.
Genuinely, it retroactively ruined the entire show.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that because you've obviously spent a lot of time watching. Oh, maybe you loved it as well.
It was my favorite show of all time, and now I feel like it's one of the worst because it's the most pointless. It's so pointless.
That's a shame.
Yeah,
because you got that tattoo on your lower back, didn't you?
Yeah, with Richard Nixon. Oh no, that's something. Yeah. For anyone who didn't get that reference, that was a reference to the Patreon episode we recorded. Don't know why I'm explaining this. I'm kind of thinking this will be cut out this little bit.
It's fine. It'll stay in because it's patreon.com/justinteresting. Any plug we can get. My comment is from Low Waist High Melanin. And they say, just so you know, in Korea, it's really bad manners. Oh, this is in relation to the news story last week about the woman who was a chief executive on an airline, and she got arrested because she had gotten a fight with airline staff over peanuts being served in a bag as opposed to on a plate. That's the background. So, Low Waist High Melon says, just so you know, in Korea, it's really bad manners to serve a guest something to eat while still wrapped in packaging. A plate for first class makes sense and is probably their policy. The woman didn't need to assault someone and disrupt the flight over it. Yeah. I think that can safely be said. Then they write, I'm sure she's one of those people used to getting her way and being treated like an elite all the time. Making someone kneel, it's really disrespectful as well. Yeah, I agree with you. That is one of the most ridiculous stories about her getting in a fight over peanuts.
Yeah.
Being put on a plate instead of a bag and making the plane turn around, for goodness sake.
Yeah. It's interesting to have a little bit more context, though, that maybe that was seen as a sign
interesting.
Sign of not, being rude. I guess, like, it to me, it just made no sense. Like, I think you said last week, it makes more sense having it in a bag, especially on a plane.
Makes you wonder, are Koreans really offended then when they travel to the West and get served things in packaging?
I mean,
Gary Lineker's their worst enemy. Bag of crisps. Get out of here.
For any US listeners, that was a reference to footballer/celebrity Gary Lineker, who's a sponsor of Walker's Crisps.
Yeah, his favourite flavour is salt and vinegar. I mean, maybe that would be disrespectful, but there are levels to disrespect, aren't there? I'd say that hitting someone in the face and making a whole plane full of passengers turn around and land is probably slightly more disrespectful.
Oh, definitely.
Than getting your nuts on a plate.
Yeah.
No, not on a plate, in a bag.
Yeah, exactly.
I prefer my nuts bagged.
Oh,
Just going to say.
Just bringing the tone down, aren't you?
What? It's all in the eye of the beholder. I just said a statement. If you want to reinterpret it, misinterpret it as something filthy, then that's on you.
Anyway, my comment this week is from Umar Saeed, who mentioned that he said, "Thanks for mentioning Croydon, my home." This was last week. What did I say? Oh, the Ark of the Covenant could be found in Croydon.
Right.
How's that? And he said, which I've never heard of before, the World Cup trophy was found in Upper Norwood when it was stolen, so you never know. It's interesting. I haven't heard that story. I need to look into that. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, the World Cup trophy was found in Croydon.
So who knows? Who knows? The Ark of the Covenant could be in Croydon. I like that. I like that theory. Yeah. Robin liked that, didn't you?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I've just looked into it. It was found by, I've heard this a brief recollection of this, but it was found by Pickles the dog, a black and white collie who found the stolen Jules Rimet. You know, Jules Rimet, still gleaming. In the old, found it 4 months before the 1966 World Cup in Croydon.
Wow.
Very good. And there's a whole Wikipedia page about Pickles the dog.
Of course there is.
Born 1962, died 1967. That's not a long life, is it?
Oh.
Well, that last year was spent in pampered luxury after finding the World Cup.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Just think, if he had a few more years, he could have found the Ark of the Covenant. So
could have done.
Go. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier on, this main topic came at a request from one of our Patreon supporters, Joseph Donahue, who wanted us to look into the claims made by Carol Moore in 2011, who says that there is a link between sunspot activity and human tendencies to mass action and social and political change. And I mean, what an interesting premise right off the bat.
Yeah.
So sunspots, basically, for those of you who don't know, are this kind of phenomena in the sun's photosphere, and they appear as dark spots across the sun with different temperature and magnetic wave fluctuations. And the amount of sunspots vary year on year. And this kind of variation, scientists noticed, are kind of cyclical. They move in a pattern. There's a maximum number of them and a minimum number of them that appear on a regular basis. And they basically worked out that this is a roughly 11-year cycle between the maximum number of sunspots. And the connection that Carol Moore points out is that when the sun reaches this peak, i.e. is at its point of most active sunspots, humanity also sees big social and political upheaval, often characterized by mass protests and rioting. And the two major events that she cites to support her claim are the 2011, Arab Springs. So that was a series of protests, uprisings and rebellions in Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Bahrain. And then the second event is that she herself has used this theory to predict the fall of the Soviet Union. And interestingly, she didn't predict the fall of the Soviet Union based on anything else, any kind of political inklings that were going on during the time. She based it solely on when the max solar cycle was going to take place. And she predicted it down to the month. Was it November 1989? Was it November?
Yeah. Which is when the Berlin Wall came down. Yeah.
Do we know when she made this prediction?
That's a good question. I mean, that's the thing.
She claims she made it in the early 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess she might have seen it coming, but I mean, still to predict it down to the month is pretty impressive. Either way. But you're right. That is just her claim, and we should say that all of her kind of theories are written on this one website that was last updated in 2011, and it's like this old school style website. But the theory is kind of interesting. And I think, Robin, you've kind of seen if there's a historical precedent for this, taken this
Yeah.
theory and expanding it backwards through history. So what can you tell us?
Yeah, well, fascinatingly, the solar cycle in which she wrote her theory up in 2011 has ended now, or is ending. And I think scientists are saying that the next solar cycle, which is the 25th solar cycle that they've observed, is beginning this year in 2020. So I thought I'd go back through the lists of solar cycles and look at what was happening in the world when each of those 11-year cycles reached their peak. And actually, the interesting thing about when she was writing in 2011, Carol Moore said that that was a peak of the solar cycle, but the actual peak of that particular solar cycle came in 2013, 2014, so a couple of years later.
Okay.
And 2011 was actually just like the peak before the peak, if that makes sense. It was like the sunspots were at their most active in 2011 until there were more in 2013, 2014. But if we look at those dates for when there were peaks in the solar cycles, we've got 2014, and in that year we had the Ukrainian Revolution, when the Ukraine kicked out their kind of Russian-sponsored government, and Russia responded by annexing the Crimea. That was the beginning as well of ISIS, their big offensive in Iraq, which led to massive disturbance, and of course the Syrian civil war in the Middle East. You've also got the Burkinabe uprising in Africa, which replaced their government. And then in the previous peak, you've got 2001, which is when we had the Albanian insurgency in Macedonia, which is when they achieved some kind of recognition and political representation of the Albanian population in Macedonia. In the Philippines, you had the second EDSA People Power Revolution, and you also had the Argentinazo, which I think I'm pronouncing correctly, but probably wrongly, which is another big political upheaval and replacement of a regime in Argentina. And the previous solar cycle was, as we mentioned, 1989, and Carol Moore was absolutely correct about that. And that not only saw the fall of the Soviet Union, which we should mention was actually triggered by a massive wave of mass protests and uprisings, most of them peaceful, throughout Europe and the Soviet Union, including the reunification of Germany, the so-called Velvet Revolution, the Singing Revolution, which was a whole series of very peaceful protests throughout Europe, and the violent Romanian Revolution. Over in China at the same time, in 1989, you had the Tiananmen Square protests, where you had 1 million protesters fighting the army in China in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. You had a coup d'etat in Paraguay, and you had, perhaps less significantly, but just interestingly, in Sri Lanka, they had the first election they'd had for 12 years, but only because there'd been a series of violent protests and uprisings. Then the previous solar peak was in 1979, and anybody who knows their Middle Eastern history knows that there was the Iranian Revolution, which saw the Ayatollah Khomeini come into power in Iran. You had a Grenadian Revolution. You had the Sandinistas seizing control in Nicaragua, which eventually led to the Iran-Contra affair. You had huge student protests in Nepal, which led to a government referendum to decide whether they would change the way they ran their country. The previous solar peak, you had 1968, which was the Prague Spring, which saw a massive kind of democratic upsurge in the Czech Republic, what would become the Czech Republic. You had massive student marches in Poland and in France and in America and in Yugoslavia and in Mexico, where they even massacred the student protesters in a notorious event. Then you had a coup d'etat in Panama. 10 years earlier, 1958, you have the previous solar peak, which I think was the strongest one ever recorded. And that led to a massive crisis. That coincided with a massive crisis in France, which led to the fall of the Fourth Republic and the foundation of the Fifth Republic. And that crisis in France actually led to, indirectly, a huge number of French colonies becoming independent. You also had in 1958 a coup d'etat in Iraq, which led to the formation of the Iraqi Republic. And then the uprising before that, the solar peak before that was in 1947, where a little less was happening. And this is where her theory starts to maybe get a little problematic, because you did have some things like an uprising in Taiwan. and a rebellion in Madagascar against French rule. And you had some strikes and riots in France. But overall, not much really happened in 1947. And interestingly, if you're trying to draw a connection between peaks in solar activity leading to violent uprising and mass protests, 1947 is a bad year because that was actually kind of the downtime after the Second World War. And actually, you see a lot of significant political change happening, but pretty much all peaceful, because you've got a whole bunch of European countries that had been taken over and invaded by Nazi Germany suddenly being given democratic governments for the first time and having all these elections. And some of them were rigged by the communists in Eastern Europe. But nonetheless, you've got a lot of political change happening, like the partition of India and the formation of Pakistan, and the independence of India happening. But that was after years of relatively peaceful protest led by people like Gandhi. And of course, you've got the beginning of the Cold War, the very definition of nothing happening. That is particularly violent. So 1947, I think, is when this theory starts to kind of not really match up with history. And I kind of... scientists have only observed 24 solar cycles. So I went back and looked at the first solar cycles when they reached their peak. Sorry, the first ones that scientists have observed. And that goes back to 1761. And you've got 1761, 1769, 1778, 1788, 1805, and 1816 were the first few solar peaks. And basically nothing much happened.
That's recorded, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's recorded. But what's interesting about that period, and maybe this reinforces Carol Moore's suggestion, or maybe it undermines her suggestion, which is that throughout that period, that's like the golden age of colonialism and empire formation. And so you've got endless war, basically, between nations. And the kind of the kernel of Carol Moore's theory is that solar cycles influence human behavior to the point that it triggers massive protest and kind of... The implication is democratic uprising and people seizing power from the ground up. But in this age, the earliest solar cycles, pretty much it's just good old-fashioned imperial warfare.
Business as usual.
Yeah. So I wonder to what extent you could plausibly make a connection with historical evidence between solar cycles and human behavior.
I mean, looking at your timeline, Robin, there's some fantastic research here, by the way. So,
Thank you.
Well done for that. These years, of course, a lot of stuff's happening. If you look back, I mean, there are a few. Even in say 2001, there was 9/11, which changed everything, right? The start of the Afghan War, etc. Moves towards finding weapons of mass destruction, which then led to the Iraq War in 2003 as well. But is this unique to those years? I mean, if you looked at every year in our calendar, surely you'd find elements of social and political change just by the nature that if you look at every year ever, there's always stuff happening around the world. Of course, if you look at the prediction of the Soviet Union and the fall of it and going down to the month, if we can verify that, then that is still an extraordinary claim. Could be luck, but it's it's still an extraordinary claim. But are these things unique? That's what I'm thinking. I mean, is it purely coincidental, or if we looked at say 2012 and then 11 years before then, and then looked at 11 years before that, and we're a little bit of a different cycle. Say we looked at the middle of the solar peaks, would there be any
I'm sure
difference?
You could,
would we still be thinking big things are happening?
I'm sure you could still find some dramatic events going on during those times.
I mean, one thing that isn't included, one thing that doesn't coincide with a peak in the solar cycle is like a major event like the French Revolution or the American Revolution. These massive historical events, and particularly in the case of the French Revolution, which is defined by people at the bottom triggering mass protest and riots and outright murder to depose a regime. And that doesn't coincide with solar cycle activity at all, really. Unless you think of the fact that these solar cycles, they reach their peak, but it's not like it's a sudden spike in solar radiation. It's like there's a build up to it. I mean, if you saw a graph, it would be like waves,
Yeah.
with obvious peaks, but there would definitely be a build up towards that peak over the preceding years.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, either you can interpret that as we can expand the definition of a solar peak to cover all kinds of other events like the French Revolution that doesn't exactly coincide with a year and a month in which the solar cycle reached its peak, but the build-up to it might cause the French Revolution, you could argue. Or you could do the other thing and say, well, the build-up in solar activity to a peak in solar radiation takes so long that basically we're constantly under pressure from the sun. All this unrest, which, as Martin points out, if you look, you could probably look at any year in history, right, and find that something horrible and dramatic was happening somewhere. So it's just constantly happening in the background. It's just that maybe there's a coincidence between major historical events and solar cycle peaks.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's interesting. Like, yeah, because that was going to be my point with some of these events. Seem like the whole peak solar cycle makes it sound like these events just happened out of nowhere. But yeah, like the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a lot that led up to that. It didn't just happen because everyone went mad for like 1 month in 1989.
It's true,
but yeah,
the theory.
But yeah, that makes sense if it's like a wave building up to it. Maybe depends how long it would be take to ramp up, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Carol Moore, she isn't a scientist, is she? She's a libertarian.
Yeah.
And she's a
political activist.
An activist, pacifist. Yeah. But she's one thing she isn't is a scientist, right? And so everything, and this was written in 2011 as well on a website that's definitely outdated. Hasn't been updated since then, and then kind of the trail's gone a little bit cold on her theory. So anything like this, we've got to take it with a pinch of salt, kind of scientifically. So,
and we're not scientists either. We'll say that straight.
Yeah, let's make that clear.
So I think it'd be good to give a little bit of a background about whether scientifically, from what we researched, if there would be any chance that this could happen or could make sense, this theory. And so it is true that radiation from the sun is on the electromagnetic spectrum itself. So about half of it is in the visible spectrum that we can see, and nearly half of it is in the infrared spectrum. But scientific studies show that there really isn't much influence on human behaviour after exposure to frequencies from the electromagnetic spectrum.
Right.
So kind of they've said that at most it can cause people to be, say, irritable or suffer a little bit from sleeplessness or amnesia.
But those are
I didn't mean amnesia. Oh. I meant insomnia.
That's the one. But
sorry, I've been playing too many horror games.
Those effects, though, like extrapolated across the entire population, surely would have massive influences on human behaviour.
That sounds like writing behaviour to me.
I think these are incredibly negligible, though. We're talking about in very few cases this happens, and the effects are incredibly negligible.
Right. Okay.
So,
Still,
so a lot of these studies have been into people using tech as well. It hasn't been from sunspots. It's from people using things like mobile phones, right? So, using mobile phones can affect your sleep. Yeah, of course they can.
Right.
Microwaves, stuff like this, as opposed to sunspots. So we don't really know in terms of solar radiation what the effect is. And also with things like mobile phones, you track over a short period of time. Solar radiation is over a long period of time, isn't it? It's, as you were speaking about, the waves building up in between these peaks. This needs to be studied over a long period of time, and that kind of study just hasn't been done. So all we know really is the effect of radiation, electromagnetic radiation, from devices that we have. So we don't know the whole story really, but it seems like the effects of radiation in general on behaviour are incredibly negligible.
Right. Okay.
This seems to be fairly definitive, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Yeah.
Well, that's what they say. But maybe that's because they don't want people to find out, Martin. Because if I mean, generally, if this was true and it was found out to be true, what would the implications of that be on humanity? That'd be like, imagine if everyone knew that, well, we're ramping up now, human behavior is going to get weird for the next couple of years.
Wow, yeah.
Would it have an effect,
Okay.
or would people just like try and pretend it doesn't exist?
Can we put it to the test? When's the next solar peak due? And we can prepare ourselves and be like, okay, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling like I want to riot, I'm just going to take a moment, check the calendar. Is it a solar peak? It's
Yeah.
fine.
So I think it's predicted to be between 2023 and 2026, which is quite a big time frame there. Which I think is probably another issue with this, right? You can't necessarily, you can go by every 11 years, but the peaks they're not exact, are they? They vary, like exactly where the peak is in sunspot activity. So we can only really give a kind of a rough prediction as to when this will happen. I mean, there could be the whole thing of a bit of a placebo effect, in my opinion. Where people are thinking, okay, it's ramping up. I'm starting to feel something. I'm starting to get a little bit irritated. I'm not sleeping very well. I mean, I can imagine people using it maybe as an excuse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that struck me though is that, at least in the 20th century, it's kind of weird how much these major events of political unrest and mass protest do coincide with peaks in the solar cycle and the number of sunspots on the sun. It's just kind of weird.
It's definitely pretty compelling.
Yeah. But at the same time, like you say, Martin, like no scientific study suggests there is an effect of electromagnetism on human behavior. But then if the study hasn't been properly done, that's particularly into sunspot radiation, then maybe we should wait until the scientists actually study that.
Yeah.
To make a judgment.
There's been studies, hasn't there, about wives' tale of kids acting up when there's a full moon, and there's been research into it, and it is true that children sleep less when there's a full moon. So in terms of children not being able to get to sleep when it's a full moon, it's true, but it's probably due to it being a little bit lighter when they're going to bed, and the moon coming through their window. And apparently studies have shown that it's only by a few minutes that children sleep less. So the effect of it is very negligible. But perhaps there's something to it regardless. But it's very negligible.
Yeah, the lunar effect is really interesting. Like, I mean, that's kind of... it's interesting as well because it's kind of spawned so much cultural legends surrounding that as well. Exactly, like with werewolves and everything. The moon,
serial killers, full moon, and lunacy. That very word.
Exactly. And just anecdotally, there've been cases of people that have worked in insane asylums that have said like, "Oh, it's a full moon tonight. Need extra staff on the ward." Yeah.
So there is reason, and we know, of course, the moon does have a physical effect on the Earth because of the way it affects the tides.
Yes.
So it's not implausible that something as long term and as kind of nebulous as radiation from the sun over many decades could have an effect, and we just have never noticed because it takes so long for it to kind of build up.
There's plenty we don't know. Isn't there? There's plenty of stuff that science in its current form can't explain. So I would, I find it really difficult, and increasingly so to count these things out in their entirety. But I am still a skeptic when it comes to this, and I think that the very nature of the fact that it builds up over the years and that we can't necessarily predict exactly when the peak is going to be, yet we're trying to attach very specific events to this activity that's where it becomes problematic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the only way it really makes sense is if you take some examples like the 1979 Iranian Revolution alongside the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989. Those kind of things only make sense if you accept Carol Moore's suggestion as being long-term injustices and dissatisfaction builds up, and then all it takes is increased radiation from the sun for people to be like, I'm fed up, mate. I'm fed up. And then this kind of snowball effect happens where populations as a whole rise up. And that's interestingly relevant to 2020, of course, because we've had, particularly in America, a huge kind of civil unrest as a result of one person's death. But not just that one person's death, there's other factors, namely years and years of injustice and oppression of Black Americans. And in this particular year, we've got a pandemic and a lockdown, which a lot of people correctly have pointed out has left people frustrated. And so all it took was that spark for people to really be like, I'm not having it anymore. I'm going out and I'm protesting. I'm saying my piece. Did that coincide with a peak in the solar cycle? If the next peak is 2023 to 26, sounds like it didn't.
No.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, there are certainly enough world events in the past and present that they don't necessarily coincide.
Yeah. But then maybe Carol Moore, if she were right and this year was the year of a solar peak, maybe things would be a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Good luck for 2023.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe we're thinking things are going to settle down after this year. Apparently not. Apparently we've got another few years of this.
Joe Biden, get prepared. Your election year is going to be hell.
I mean, I think this is a good indication, if this is true, that maybe Joe Biden's not going to win. And there'll be 4 more years of Trump. So
4 more years.
Yeah.
Years.
It's definitely interesting.
It feels like it's.
What do you guys think about this in the comments? Because this was kind of new to me, and yeah, I find it fascinating. Definitely looking back through all those historical events that just happened to coincide with this year, it definitely makes it interesting. But quite rightly, this year doesn't fall under that peak, and yet it seems pretty mental so far. So, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. No, thank you so much for Joseph for bringing that to us, and for Carol for coming up with the theory as well.
Definitely. Anyway, would you guys be up for a quiz?
You don't even know. You don't even need to ask us, of course.
Absolutely,
Martin. You need to beat Robin this time. You need to beat me.
I say you don't need to ask. By the end of last season, I was trying to get the quiz cancelled. So
yeah, that's true.
But yes, I'm up for it.
Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to this week's quiz. As always, there'll be 10 questions plus a bonus question. Martin, do you think you can beat the undefeated champion of season 2, that is Robin?
I do have a great track record, so
we've only had one quiz.
If I was shaking the 8 ball, it would probably be like I don't know, not likely. What are the different ones in the 8 ball? My sources
not
say
looking good, is
my
it?
Sources say unlikely. Well, I can't even think what they are. Anyway, unlikely, but we'll see.
Yeah.
10 questions about
This
rugby.
is truly a David versus Goliath story.
I mean, I'm flattered,
Totally
but also
unjustified.
insulted at the same time.
Yeah. Oh. Well, okay. Let's hear your buzzers. Robin, what have you got for me?
I think you know this one.
Oh, really?
Yay.
If anyone is in these woods, show yourselves.
So is this just going to be it now for the entirety of season 2? Are you just going to have
it could
this?
well be, yeah. This will be it.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to start deducting points at some point.
Oh no, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's not fun. I'll just have to get my revenge some other way.
You capitulated very easily there, Alex.
Okay. Martin, what's your buzzer?
Everyone's favourite East Anglian chef, Delia Smith.
Let's be having.
Come on. Yeah. Beautiful.
Doesn't seem that way in her cooking shows.
It doesn't.
Does she?
No,
she
not
doesn't.
at all.
Yeah, she's a slightly different manner.
Okay, well, the quiz this week, excitingly, is themed around general knowledge. So, I mean, it's
The best theme.
It's going to be wild.
It's good.
Let's
It's good. It gives everyone hopefully a bit of a chance at home too,
exactly.
rather than being about
Okay.
rugby.
Yeah, there's no rugby questions, which I don't know why. I need to give you, some support in these quizzes.
Yeah, I need it. Yeah.
You don't. You're doing
No,
fine.
I'm not saying that, but
No, I do.
Robin's got the entirety of Google downloaded into his brain, so it's not
true,
really
actually,
fair.
yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Okay. Question 1. Where is the one place the American flag flies all the time, but is never raised, lowered, or saluted?
Wow.
Wow.
It feels like a
indeed.
riddle.
It's a bit of a riddle, this one, yeah, a little bit.
Is Dick Turpin here?
Raised, never
Is
saluted.
Dick Turpin in these woods? Show yourself.
Martin, you have a guess, Martin?
That wasn't
No,
me.
You can't do that.
I know. Go on then,
go for
Robin.
Is it the moon?
It is the moon, yes.
Nice.
Well
Good
done.
deduction. That's quality.
Very, very smart of you, Robin.
So what was say the question again?
Very clever.
I wasn't really listening. What was the question?
Martin, get in the game,
Get your
Martin.
excuses
What-
in
what-
early.
He's going to run away
What
with
was it?
this.
It's raised but never.
Where is the one place the American flag flies all the time, but is never raised, lowered, or saluted? And I guess it's kind of
raised.
a bit iffy. Someone could have a little look up at the moon and give it.
I salute the American flag on the moon every night before bed.
Every night.
So
Well,
question.
that's,
So it's
that's
wrong.
on you, Martin.
Still 0-0.
That's on you. I guess. How far away do you have to be to classify it as you're saluting that thing?
That's a good
'Cause
point.
I feel like
could
from
salute
Earth to the
the
moon is a
Kenyan
bit too
flag
far.
every night. and
There is
would it count?
when it comes to my devotion and loyalty to the American flag, distance does not matter.
Fair enough. I mean, this is assuming there is a flag up there. Let's be real.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
it could not be that. Oh.
Good point.
Okay. Question 2, 1-0 to Robin.
Mm-hmm.
What type of street has a name that's French for the arse of a bag?
Oh,
Is there anyone
What type-
that wants to make contact? If anyone isn't,
Oh. I want to give that to you, Martin, but I,
I pressed,
feel like
I pressed
did.
it twice. I pressed it, and
Oh, in
it
that case,
started,
Martin.
and then I pressed it again. But I think Robin was there first anyway.
No. In that case, you definitely got it first. If you pressed it twice and it was instantaneous, then you must have been first.
Because I wasn't sure because I heard some background noise that I think was my voice, but I don't.
Oh, I don't.
I
don't
No,
wanna-
go for it, Martin. You go for it.
A cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done,
Thank
Martin.
Do they have
I
those
don't
in
think-
America? Because
Sorry?
we have those in England
Mm.
and presumably France. But is that a thing in the rest of the world, the English-speaking world?
What?
That's a good point.
To have those streets.
Do cul-de-sacs
Yeah,
exist?
cul-de-sac. Yeah.
I mean, they kind of, yeah. They do, don't they? They do. Of course they do. Yeah. Because Americans, I mean, I'm not sure if it's called that, but a lot of Americans live on a road that doesn't
That's
go
what I meant.
anywhere.
I meant, do they have that name? rather
Oh,
than,
right, okay, yeah.
Does that thing even exist?
Yeah.
A dead
Yeah.
end? What is this? Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty loose translation. I think it's more of like bottom of a sack, like a dead end, basically.
Yeah.
Is what it means. But arse of a bag.
I like
If
it.
you wanna.
I'll send a bag. I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Question 3. There is a potential of 2 points up for grabs with this question.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
A potential.
Okay.
So the question is, what are the 6 murder weapons used in the original game of Cluedo? And
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, don't
No,
finish the
okay.
question. You must.
I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to finish the question. So go for it.
Okay. You've got the rope. You've got the lead piping. You
Yeah.
have a spanner. You have a revolver. You have a dagger. And you also have spanner, dagger.
Oh, go on! You're so close.
Ah, shit. The hell's the last one? Rope, dagger, lead piping.
Oh, it's one of the best ones.
Yeah, it's kind of like. I feel like it's the one that most people say when they're joking about Cluedo, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Just out of
you're
interest,
gonna
how
kick
are there
yourself.
2 points in this question? Because he's listing 6 things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was going to give you 1 point for getting 3 of them, and then a bonus point if you got all 6.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
Oh,
So you've got one.
okay.
So you've got 1
okay.
point.
Give me 5 seconds. Let's have a quick think.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2.5, 2,
Come on.
1.
I
Okay,
can't
Martin.
think.
Well, you got 5 of them, so I think I'm just going to give you the point, and then Robin, I'm not going to give you a point for getting the last one, but
I mean, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
if you can tell Martin what
I
it is,
believe the
then,
one he's missing is a candlestick.
Candlestick, of course it is.
Yeah.
it was the candlestick. Yeah.
That's good. What was the rest of the question? Was there like a
No, I was just going to say like the parameters for getting the bonus point, but I wanted him to think that was a bit
Candlestick.
extra.
I haven't played
question.
Cluedo or Clue as it is in America for a number of years. Been ages.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I learned this week that I didn't say, there was a TV series of Cluedo in the early 90s.
Really?
Yeah,
There was a
filmed
TV
over here in the
series,
UK and called Cluedo. So I guess it was a,
What did
a
they
British TV series.
do? What was it?
I haven't seen it, but now I want to. I want to
Yeah.
fiint out. Like,
Yeah.
how do you
They
spin
all
that
just-
out over a whole series?
They all just played a game of Cluedo for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And,
Do you remember there being a paintballing show on TV? Do you remember that? I used to love that as a kid. They'd
No,
have
but it
to
sounds
do
awesome.
challenges and
Yeah.
enter a compound and stuff. It was well good.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Because paintballing is never as exciting as I want it to be. You know?
No, they definitely edited it heavily.
Yeah.
Okay, question 4. That's 2-1
2-1
to Robin still.
No, it isn't. It's 2-1 to Martin.
Oh yeah, Martin, you got
Oh,
cul-de-sac,
what?
didn't you?
Oh,
What the
rightly or
heck?
wrongly, I got the point for cul-de-sac.
2-1 to Martin. Yeah,
Okay.
it was nearly 3-1, Martin.
Oh, crazy.
So close.
Wait a
Okay. Question 4. I shouldn't be rooting for you so heavily.
It's
should
allowed.
I?
It's allowed. It's fine.
In a standard deck of playing cards, what is the queen always holding?
Oh. Wow.
In a standard deck of playing cards, what is the queen always holding? And
I should know this. Shit.
Yeah.
don't be running off screen and trying to check this or anything. Okay.
I feel like,
Wow.
yeah. Why is the queen always holding?
What is the queen always holding?
You know,
Oh my
that's a... Ooh, yeah.
Good question.
Hmm.
And I did check this with a deck of cards. It is accurate. So
I mean, I'm going to have a stab.
If
Yeah,
anyone
I'm thinking, what
is
would a
in
queen be
these
holding?
woods,
It's not... yeah, yes. Is she holding a scepter?
no, she's not holding a scepter. Well, she might be, but maybe just one of them. I don't know. This is something that they're all holding.
Yeah, Scepter came to mind for me too when I was thinking about it.
So every single queen in the deck is holding the same thing.
the same thing. A crown.
It is not a crown. No.
It's not.
Do you want a clue?
Yeah, go on then.
Yeah.
Maybe she was holding these on the day that she became a queen.
Oh.
Martin.
Oh. Nah, it's gone.
So she's holding multiple things.
These.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, I think she is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was another clue thrown in there, I guess. But yeah, maybe she was holding these on the day that she became queen. Is the clue?
It's not a scepter, not a crown.
Where else would be
What would you
at
hold
a
when you're... Yeah.
coronation?
Yeah.
If she was a queen by marriage, I mean.
Yeah.
Oh.
The day that she got married. That's the clue.
Oh. So it's not her coronation.
show yourselves.
Oh.
Did anyone die here? Is things happen here?
Okay, Robin.
Sorry,
Okay,
I've
we
let
get
it
that.
out.
Go on.
Sorry, you said wedding day. Would that be flowers?
It is flowers.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all holding some flowers.
Okay. I
That's
was more
cool.
of I thought it was going to be more like a specific thing
I was thinking that
as
too.
opposed to
Yeah.
more generic flower. Okay. Cool.
Well, I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no,
when you
don't
said the day she
design the
became
deck
queen,
of
I was thinking
cards.
coronation. I was trying to think Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth. What were they holding when they got coronated? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's an interesting fact.
Yeah.
You learn something new every day.
You're welcome.
Nice.
You're welcome. So that I believe is 2-2.
2-2.
now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Phew. Okay. Question 5. In which year was the popular video game Fortnite first released? Martin. Oh,
2016.
okay. I'll allow this as close as
Okay.
wins, so if you want to have a guess, Robin, go for it.
Is Dick Turpin in these woods?
Well, I have to buzz in. Okay, I'll go for 2015.
Martin is closest. It's 2017.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
The thing was,
It's not as
a lot
odd.
of these things, I with movies as well, the year I think they come out, it's usually a little bit before, because that's when it becomes
Yeah.
popular, right? It takes a little bit of
The
time.
marketing starts, yes.
That's so true, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Fortnite was like
It's
that,
really
wasn't
like,
it? It
like
was-
2018 was
it was
where
some-
it really blew up, right?
Yeah, because it was originally something else, and then
Ah.
they kind of made the battle royale mode, and that became
Was it something
super
else to begin
popular.
with?
Um,
Didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I think it was still called Fortnite, but I think it had like a story mode or something. But then they kind of dropped it.
Okay.
I don't know.
funny.
I think it was a
Yeah.
like a Kickstarter project originally.
Was it?
Really?
I could be wrong about that, or not. Maybe not a Kickstarter, but the other one, whatever it
I
is.
don't know.
I could just be making that up completely.
Well,
but
Kids, anyone
And I'm not
listening,
gonna fact
you're
check
here to
it.
learn the facts, the real facts, the true facts, nothing but the facts. We don't make anything
the just
up.
interesting, random musings.
Yeah,
I guess.
someone's going to now remember your false fact, if it is false,
Yeah, it's
and repeat that, aren't they?
Actually, it'll be my fact next week. On this week, I learned that Fortnite was a
Fortnite was a
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter.
game.
My fact this week is learning that Alex was wrong last week. Yeah. Okay.
3-2 to Martin. Yeah.
It's 3-2 to Martin, but Robin, this next question, you should know. You should know.
Should I know it? That's
'Cause
not
this-
fair, is it? Should I know it, or is it just for
Both know.
Robin?
We
This
both
Well-
know, it's fine.
Technically, you should know it, but you missed out. This was. I'm just going to read the question. Okay. But there's multiple choice. It's multiple choice,
Okay.
so you'll be able to get in on the action,
Okay.
Martin.
Okay, I understand.
What is the correct term for a question mark immediately followed by an exclamation mark?
Show yourself,
Is it
Boudica!
I was going to say
okay?
before. Okay.
Robin's straight in there.
An interrobang.
It is an interrobang. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Martin.
I guess I have an unfair advantage.
I was kind of hoping you'd have forgotten about it, Robin, but that was a question from Peaswad, who made a quiz for us in our Discord.
What was it?
Yeah,
So
Martin,
you're
you weren't
using
there.
a question that's already
You
been
weren't
used in another quiz with you guys both in
sorry,
it,
Mike.
In
and the
fairness,
answer.
I got
I'll be
it
honest.
right in that quiz too because I know the fact. But yes, I have refreshed my memory recently, so I suppose it's unfair advantage.
I'm sorry, Martin.
It's a disgrace.
If you want me to throw in a rugby union question, I will be.
No, it's okay. I didn't know it, and Robin, you knew it, so that is fair.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the name
Question-
for question
question
mark
7.
combined with a full
Oh.
stop?
What's that?
Hmm?
Sorry.
What's the name of a question mark combined with a full stop?
Or you're just showing off now.
No, it's a genuine question. I don't know.
I don't know.
A
Go on.
swillabop.
A full question. Stop.
Question
No
stop.
idea. I have no idea. It's probably just a
Oh.
question mark. It's just,
Oh, I don't know.
You have no
No
idea.
idea.
Why are you bringing this up? Derailing my quiz. Questions for that. I'm deducting a point. No, I'm not really. So what's that? Is that 3 all
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 7.
Okay.
What is the name of the fictional town set in the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Oh,
God.
Is there anyone here that wants to make contact? If it,
Yes, Robin.
is it Sunnydale?
Yes.
It is
That's right,
Sunnydale.
yeah.
Nicely
Wow, well
done.
remembered. You know,
Yeah,
I was
well
remembered,
speaking,
yeah.
what was it, the night before last, to my wife, saying, you know what, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I really want to see how that's aged. So if I'd got on it and watched that straight away, maybe I would have been better in that question.
Yeah, you would know, wouldn't you? Yeah.
It's
yeah,
aged,
that's a good
aged
point,
really
yeah.
well. Yeah, it's one
Has
of
it?
one of my girlfriend's favorite TV shows.
sweet.
We watched it recently. It's good.
Have you?
yeah.
What have you been watching it on?
The CGI in the early seasons are bad,
Yeah.
but everything else about the episodes
Are
good.
you watching it on DVD or like streaming it?
we got a box set, but it's on Amazon Prime. So
Nice. But
There you
genuine
go.
question: is it DVD or Blu-ray?
DVD. So it's in the old formats.
Well, exactly.
It's
That's
a
the best.
9x6.
That's the best format
Yeah.
to watch it in, because for the HD transfer for the remaster, they
Yeah.
changed all the color
Special effects
and the
stuff.
color correction as well. So
right.
they did loads of. They shot
can-
most of it the day, but then they altered it to make it look like it was nighttime. But then for the HD remaster, they forgot that, and they just used the original master footage. So like, there's loads of scenes that are supposed to be at night, but they look like they're in the day.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So that's an interesting
Yeah.
bit of trivia there.
Well, there you go. You don't get a bonus point for that.
Nice.
Um,
Darn it.
Okay, 4-3 to Robin. Here we go. Question 8. From 2017 onwards, how many characters long can tweets be?
Anyone is in these woods. Show yourselves.
Robin?
I think
there it
I've
is.
got this wrong now, but I'm going to say 140, or is that's the original one, isn't it?
You've had the guess.
140.
That's wrong, isn't it?
Oh man. So it's either 250 or 400. Is it closest wins?
Yeah, go on then. I'll allow closest.
Okay, closest wins. I'm going 250.
In my head, it just happened
Right.
as well. But 2017, time flies.
Yeah, I know. Well, Martin, you are closest. It was 280 characters, so they doubled it.
Yeah.
From 140 to 280.
I should know that definitely, but hey.
Okay, so that is, I think, 4-4 now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's close. It's tense. Okay. Question number 9. How old do you have to be to stand for US president?
Ooh.
Hmm.
And I will accept closest wins on this question.
Did anyone die here?
I think Martin was in there first.
I thought it was like an odd number, an even number, but a strange one. Something like 38. I had in my mind. Weirdly,
Okay.
don't know why.
I was just going to go for
Fair enough.
21.
Well, Martin is closest. The actual answer is 35.
Really?
Okay.
You have to be 35 or older to stand for president. You can have other political offices before that, like out from 21, or maybe even from younger than that, actually.
Wow.
I'm not too sure, but
Yeah.
I think
I knew that it was
35
older than
is the limit for running for
you would
president.
necessarily think.
A few years'
Yeah.
time, we can run for president. Yeah.
Oh,
There's nothing else
yeah.
stopping us.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We can just go over there and run for
I was
president.
born in
It's
Hawaii.
absolutely fine. Okay, so Martin, you've taken the lead. It's now 5-4.
So I guess nervy.
Question number 10. Who was the only British Prime Minister to be assassinated?
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Oh, don't know your British history.
Yeah,
As if
no,
I,
No,
as
this
if
is
I
one of those
actually knew
questions
this to
generally
begin with.
comes up on general knowledge quizzes all the sodding time, and I never, ever remember the answer.
Big Tap in here?
It's embarrassing.
Is Dick Turpin
Go on
in
then, Robin.
these woods? Show yourself. Boudica?
You don't have to play the whole thing each time. I'd already
Boudica!
said it was fine.
Sorry, I just had to.
It's beautiful.
William.
I'll stop you right there. No.
It's not a William. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go for John.
Bloody hell.
Nope, you're incorrect. Do you want a clue?
I think we
Yeah,
might.
it might
be
help. It might help. Yeah.
So his surname also shares a name with one of King Arthur's knights.
Oh. Okay. Well, Lancelot. Nobody's
Yes.
called Lancelot. No one's called
No,
that.
no chance.
Yeah.
James Lancelot.
It's not Lancelot, I'll tell you that.
No one's called Galahad. Surely.
No.
Who else was there?
Are you just thinking of the ones in
Personnel.
Monty
Grail?
Python, going by that.
Monty Python's Holy
I
Grail.
mean, that,
I don't think he's actually one of the knights in the Holy Grail.
He is, or he isn't.
that clue, Alex,
I don't
didn't
think he
really
is.
help me. Because I'm just thinking, well, King Arthur, and then there's Lancelot, and I don't really know the rest.
Yeah, is there another clue?
Galahad's, yeah,
Yeah.
or just don't. That's fine too. Probably aren't really any other clues you can give, are there?
It's a tough one. I could give you his surname, and you could tell me his first name if you
No,
want.
surely the other way around is better, right?
Yeah.
Or so I give you the first name, and you can tell me the
Otherwise,
surname.
we'll just be guessing first names.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe fingers on
Okay,
buzzers.
okay.
Martin, I'm looking at you. You got your buzzer sorted, yeah?
I don't know.
I'm really rooting for you, buddy.
Difficult to know.
Well, he's got the so.
Okay. So his first name is Spencer.
Oh,
Martin.
no, Robin, go for
Is
it.
there anyone here that wants to make contact?
Spencer Percival.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Spencer
Why
Percival.
didn't I just say it?
Oh, did you know it? But you.
No, as in like when you were mentioning the Knights of the Round Table, I was going Percival.
Oh, right.
I Prime Minister Percival. I didn't associate it with Spencer. Oh dear.
Oh.
Must commit that to memory now.
So it was a good clue. It did help. It did put you on the right
That's
hand.
so weird how you said that, and I was like Percival. Weird, man.
Yeah.
Should have just spoken out loud.
Good one, though.
It's okay.
Weird.
It's okay because we're in one of those rare situations where the bonus question
He's
is
the tiebreaker.
actually
Yeah,
important.
true.
5 each. Oh, it's getting tense. Okay, so it's a closest wins question.
Okay.
In meters, how tall is the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world?
If
Okay.
anyone is in these woods, show yourselves.
1,800 meters.
Okay. Closest wins.
It's nearly,
Closest wins.
yeah.
1,000 meters.
Okay, so drum roll, please.
No.
Martin is closest.
It's 850 or something, isn't it?
It's 828 meters. Yes.
Okay, I thought it was
Very
a lot
close.
taller than it
Did you
really
kind
is.
of?
I did roughly know it.
Ah, well done.
I've got my
Why's that?
skyscraper top trumps.
Huh? Really?
Nice.
Okay, I was wildly
Well, there you
off there.
go.
So there is no building that's over 1,800 meters.
Not since the top trumps were
That's
made.
nearly two. That's nearly 2 kilometers high.
Good
That would be.
on the knowledge. Well done.
The Emerald City right there.
That puts Martin at the top of the league table with 100% victory.
Yes. What?
Yes, it does.
Oh,
Whoa.
that's exciting. It won't last, but it's exciting for now.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Oh, nice.
Good quiz.
Nice.
Good quiz.
No,
Thank you.
nice, yeah.
Thank you very much. Glad you enjoyed it, and thank you both of you for the riveting conversation that we've had this week. I always
thank
bloody
you.
love these chats that we
It's a
have.
highlight.
Yeah.
I was saying this to you guys, wasn't I, in the week, that doing this podcast is genuinely, it's a highlight, and it's just always lovely to be able to just speak to mates about things that we find interesting. So yeah, it's a podcast that we love doing for our audience, but we also just enjoy it ourselves. I imagine if no one was listening, we'd be catched up and chatting about stuff anyway, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
The fact that we've got people listening to it is just a nice bonus.
It is.
A little
It is.
bonus. Yeah, not a
And if you want, to listen to more, there is our Patreon where we are. What were we discussing? What did we discuss again today?
Roger
Roger
Stone.
Stone.
It seems
Roger
like
Stone.
a lifetime.
It was, to be fair. We've been recording for a while.
It's been a while.
But yeah, Roger Stone and the dealings with Trump. So if you're interested in that, head on over.
That was a smooth
Yeah.
segue, Martin. That was a very smooth segue.
The smoothest of smooth. Yes.
Smooth, so smooth. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. Keep your comments coming in. What do you want us to discuss next week? Let us know down below. And yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.